Greetings, acolytes. Now that we have discussed the major players of the galaxy, it's time I rambled on about my favorite faction for a while. Buckle up because this is the next two videos. Today we cover the Blood Angels, their heritage in Primarch, and we will also discuss their curses, their personality, their recruitment, and several of their major characters. Without further ado, let's talk about the faction that sunk me into Warhammer 40k, the Blood Angels. This all started when I was going to Best Buy with my parents as a kid, and I ran across the Free Blade mobile game on the iPads. Now whenever I was there as a kid, I played, and years later when my parents let me get my own iPhone, I got the game, and I played it way too much. The game is based around the player playing an Imperial Knight assisted by the Dark Angels to fight orcs and World Eaters. Now you might be asking, so where does this become Blood Angels? Because I learned that there was a tabletop game with minis, so I went to Amazon and looked for Dark Angels and Space Marine stuff, when I came across Blood Angel Death Company models. And I heard the name Blood Angels and thought it was awesome, so I started doing research on them on YouTube, and like that, my fascination was born. As I said before in my Space Marine video, the Blood Angels are the Ninth Legion. Primarily dressed in red with gold details, their symbol is a drop of blood between a pair of angel wings. The Sons of Sanguinius are known across the Imperium for their nobility and devotion to its people, but they have some rather dark secrets, like every faction in the setting. When talking about one of the founding legions, it's always important to talk about their Primarch, as they are the ones who shaped the ideals and doctrines of their gene children into what we see today. I will cover Sanguinius' life extensively at a later date, but for now I will talk about the short stuff. Upon crash landing on the moon of Bal Secundus orbiting the planet Bal, Sanguinius was almost killed then and there because to the locals he was a mutant. On Bal's moons there was a great disaster, loss of time, and now mutant bands rove the wastelands and survivors tend to kill any mutants they find. But they decided to spare Sanguinius, and that was the best decision they could have ever made. Sanguinius would eventually go on to unite the tribes on his moon under his rule before the Emperor's arrival. Now before we talk about how Sanguinius changed his legion, we need to talk about the gifts bestowed upon him by the Emperor. Like all of the Primarchs, Sanguinius was a psyker, and a damn good one at that. He was capable of seeing the future, multiple futures in fact at once, and would be able to take action for the best possible results. His psychic powers continued in his most noticeable feature, his wings. Anyone who knows anything about physics would notice that he couldn't fly with wings that small, especially considering how muscly and heavy he is. His second major psychic power is that he can fly with his wings, at incredibly high speeds too. His psychic prowess has been passed on to his sons as well, with a 5% librarian rate and many more of his sons being able to see glimpses of the future inherently. But nothing in this setting comes for free, so let's talk about the curse of Sanguinius passed on to his sons. Sanguinius had a deep flaw in life, one he passed on to his sons from the very beginning. In his hearts he harbored a fury that made even the demons of Khorne balk. While he could normally keep his feelings contained underneath his immense willpower, his sons were not so fortunate. It became known as the Red Thirst, an ever-present desire for flesh and blood, no matter its source. This curse has been kept hidden from the wider galaxy for the entire history of the Blood Angels and their descendants. The curse often presents itself during periods of heightened emotion, like battle, making the Blood Angels even more ferocious in combat, turning them into whirlwinds of chain blades and gore on the battlefield. The second curse comes from a moment anyone knows anything about the Horus Heresy knows about. The death of Sanguinius triggered a blast of psychic feedback so powerful that all of his sons temporarily lost themselves completely upon his death, driving the traitors back from the palace in a blind fury. From then on, the Blood Angels would have psychic PTSD from Sanguinius' death. Over the course of their lives, they will start to hallucinate that they are Sanguinius on the day of his death, battling Horus. How does this go over in reality? They start mindlessly attacking anything in front of them, only sometimes avoiding fighting their own brothers. Once they fall to the Black Rage, they are sent to the Death Company, where they will be sent on one last mission to die in honor. During these missions, casualties are almost guaranteed, and that is because the Marines aren't supposed to make it back alive. Any Marines who do come back alive will either be sent on another mission like it, or executed by the chaplaincy. While the Death Company is deployed, all Allied forces are ordered to stay away from them, as in their current state, the Marine can't tell friend from foe, aside from their brothers. Of course, when this warning is disregarded, like in the Book of Lamardes, it has dire consequences to the loyalist force that thought glory mattered more than their orders. Only one Marine has ever come back from falling to the Black Rage, Mephiston, the Chief Librarian. He will be discussed later, and he will also be getting his own video. Lamardes himself is a chaplain caught up in the Black Rage, but is still cognizant enough to be allowed to lead the Death Company. More on him later as well. Since now we've talked about their father and their flaws, it's important to discuss where they come from, the moons of Bal. Bal is a desert wasteland of a death world, always has been, but apparently Bal's twin moons were once paradises during the Dark Age of technology. Then humans did what they always do and ruined it with a civil war, reducing both of them to toxic wastelands as well, with ruins of their long-gone civilizations still somewhat visible today. These moons are where Blood Angels recruits come from. They are exceptionally unpleasant even for a death world because, unsurprisingly, there's basically no water. Giant scorpions hide in caves and most of the populace is simply nomadic tribes doing their best to survive. Ball has a special predator on it, thirst water. This liquid looks and acts exactly like water, but it absolutely isn't. It's rumored to be a biological weapon from the ruined civilization, but there's no way to know for sure anymore. What it does is when someone goes to drink it, as soon as it makes contact with them, it drains them of all their liquid. They leave people as dried out, shriveled up husks with no fluids of any kind remaining. Because of this property, some was captured and used during the devastation of Ball as a moat around the fortress monastery of the chapter. Recruitment occurs once a generation, beginning at a place called Angel's Fall on Bal Secundus, one of the twin moons. Angel's Fall was named that because that's where Sanguinius descended onto the moon when his pod crashed there as an infant. The trials are overseen by a chaplain, apothecary, and a sergeant. Most of the following information comes from the book Dante as a first-hand account, so I highly recommend you read it for a better comprehension about what I'm going to describe. First, the boys who show up for the trials are separated into 3 groups based on physical ability, genetic compatibility, overall health, and their angelic name. Angel names are a name every boy on Ball has, a name they would take if they were to become an angel, such as Dante, Raphael, Corbulo, etc. The first group of the 3 are those unfit to serve, be it from physical ailment or mutation. The second are those fit to serve but not genetically capable of becoming a blood angel. They are given the opportunity to become chapter serfs instead. And the third group are those both physically able and genetically compatible enough to become Marines. All those from the second and third groups who decide to continue move on to the next stage. Those that would become serfs are taken away for their own training, but those who become Marines begin physical trials at Angel's Fall. It's basically a combat tournament to gauge the aspirant's capabilities and weed out the weak. This part of the trials is non-lethal, but injury leading to disqualification is also possible. Once those who meet the necessary physical requirements are assessed, they are to take a week-long trek through the desert to the real trial grounds. Those who fall behind are left behind, and if they don't make it, they weren't strong enough. Once they arrive at the place of challenge, as it's called, they will meet their brothers from the other moon, fellow aspirants past the same trials on Bal Primus. They would be separated into teams of 5, with friendships made prior being honored, as brotherhood and camaraderie are important to the Blood Angels. After this, they will take a series of regular marine trials, fighting giant scorpions with nothing but sticks as a team, navigating mazes filled with puzzles and an encroaching poisonous gas, meditation practices, and of course a capture the flag game with spring guns that fire pieces of rebar, and casualties are expected. Those that survive this are taken and given a challenge unique to the aspirant's own flaws. We only know one of these trials, which was the one faced by Commander Dante. While I can't remember the name of it, essentially he was told by the chaplain overseeing training to kill his friend for a place in the chapter, and his friend was told the same. After a short battle, Dante defeated his friend but refused to strike the killing blow. The chaplain reminded him his chance to become a Marine hinged upon this, and even threatened to kill Dante if he didn't kill his friend. Dante still refused, and in doing so passed the trial. It was a trial of morality, based on Horus killing Sanguinius during the Horus heresy. They wanted to ensure the aspirants were joining for the right reasons. Dante's friend was sickly and joined to try and save his own life. He could never become a Marine, as his reason for joining was inherently selfish. After all this, one last trial awaits the aspirants. They are taken from Bal Secundus to Bal itself, to the fortress monastery of the chapter called the Arx Angelicum. There they are given food, water, and comfortable clothing. They are then taken to a chapel to meditate for 3 days and 3 nights. No food, water, or movement of any kind. If they do anything, they fail immediately. Upon completing this trial, they are to become proper Blood Angels. The aspirants are taken to the Great Chapel, where as many members of the chapter that are available will be waiting for them. The sanguinary priests ritually cut their wrists and bleed into the Red Grail, a relic that caught Sanguinius' blood upon his death. Each sanguinary priest carries with them the diluted blood of their Primarch, the key to activating the gene seed. The aspirants then drink from the chalice, which puts them into a deep slumber, after which their gene seed will implanted. They are then taken to the Hall of Sarcophagi, which as the name suggests is a place filled with sarcophagi. However, these aren't sarcophagi for corpses. They are actually medical chambers that allow the aspirant to be transformed into a Marine over the course of a year while the Marine to be slumbers. Of course, this process isn't perfect. People sometimes succumb to one of the curses before the process is complete. Sometimes it kills them or doesn't work, or sometimes the aspirant wakes up early and has to spend the rest of the year conscious and unable to get out while they feel their body shifting around them. After a year, the sarcophagi will open, releasing the newly formed Marine. With this, they are now a full-fledged member of the chapter, and their training as a Marine begins. At this point, I'd like to talk about the chapter's personality. You can see throughout the testing methods that they are not selected solely based on strength, but also willpower and morality. To be a Blood Angel is to be given immense power with an extreme curse, one that will never fade or even lessen. You have to become a Blood Angel for the right reasons, and you have to be able to endure immense emotional hardship, otherwise you won't last long enough even if you made it through the trials to become one. Now their training as Marines also reflects this, but I'll mostly be talking about their personality and unique chapter-specific stuff from here on. First up, for a unique unit of the Blood Angels, we have the Sanguinary Guard. Formerly Sanguinius's personal bodyguards, they now protect the Chapter Master. They are the elite of the elite for the Blood Angels, even more so than the Terminators. They get all master-crafted golden armor and weapons, and use jump packs as standard. Something you'll see often in this chapter is jump pack units, because the Blood Angels have an inherent affinity for flight like their gene father. Same goes for pilots for the same reason. Speaking of jetpacks, let's talk about the next special unit, the Jump Pack Chaplains. No real special history for these guys, they're just chaplains with jump packs that have wings, unique to the Blood Angels and their successors. The last of these special units, in a story sense, there's plenty of model ones I haven't mentioned, is the Sanguinary Priests. They are apothecaries with special sacred duty to finding the cure for the curses, as well as carrying the blood of Sanguinius within their bodies. The Blood Angels are ruled by two governing bodies within the chapter. The Red Council is the chapter's commanders, like the captains and chapter master, nominating leaders in everything involving warfare. However, the Council of Blood, sometimes called the Council of Blood and Bone, is made up of the senior chaplains and sanguinary priests of the chapter, watching over the chapter's soul and working to stop the Black Rage and Red Thirst. The chapter follows two sets of teachings. Both are sets of values to hold, one for combat and one for their general lives. They are called the Warrior Virtues and the Angelic Graces, respectively. The Warrior Virtues are strength, savagery, abandon, rage, and detachment, teaching them to hold nothing back in the face of the enemy and to become detached of all restraint in the heat of battle. The Angelic Graces are honor, humility, mercy, restraint, and forgiveness. They are to remind the Blood Angels that they aren't just warriors, but were meant to be heroes and protectors of the people. Restraint isn't for their enemies, it is to prevent them from accidentally harming their allies or each other. And the forgiveness is for themselves, for the times when they mess up and must keep going. When the Blood Angels aren't in combat, you can mostly find them practicing some kind of art, be it painting, sculpting, singing, writing, woodworking, or swordplay. They all have a hobby to keep them grounded when not in combat. In fact, during the Great Crusade, they would sometimes subjugate planets just because they had something the Blood Angels wanted to try and make something with, like a special mineral for dyes and paints or a special type of wood. As a result of their artistic practices, Blood Angel war gear and armor, as well as their ships and everything else, are often ornately decorated, each piece a work of art in its own right. I hope I've painted a good picture of what the chapter is like overall. It's time to talk about specific named characters. Most of these guys will be getting their own videos, but in the meantime they're still worth mentioning here. Let's start off with the big man himself, Commander Dante. Dante is currently the oldest active space marine who isn't a dreadnought, at over 1,500 years old I think at this point. His history is too long and his deeds too many to talk about here, but the short of it is he is old and he's tired. He wants his service to end, and when he died during the devastation of Baal, he was relieved. He was genuinely upset when he came back to the world of the living, but he would never give in and kill himself. He feels like he has a duty to complete, and he would never abandon his post. As of the current day, he commands Imperium Nihilus, aka the shitty half of the galaxy that's cut off from the Astronomicon. He does not enjoy his new position. One of his trusted advisors is the Lord of Death himself, Mephiston. Possibly one of the greatest psychers in the galaxy, he looked at the shadow in the warp of the Tyranids and decided, no, I simply will not be dealing with this. He is often considered to be an embodiment of the darkness that lives within all Blood Angels. His big claim to fame, besides his psychic prowess, is his origins. Mephiston was once a Marine who fell to the Black Rage and was sent on a Death Company mission to die. He eventually got buried under rubble, where he managed to break through the Black Rage and become Mephiston, as well as gaining his psychic powers. He would later fall to the Black Rage a second time and pull himself out of it again. No one other than him has ever come out of the Black Rage once, never mind twice. But if he's the darkness within the chapter, then who makes up the light? The Sanguinor is a warp entity who arrives on the battlefield during times of great need for the Blood Angels. What it is unknown, save for the fact that it is a warp entity of great power. In short, it is the opposite of Mephiston, the light of the Blood Angels made manifest, sent to save the sons of Sanguinius. In fact, during Dante's long life, he has had the most personal interactions and experiences with the Sanguinor, and Dante is the only person it has ever spoken to. None in the chapter would dare defy it or resist it if it were to try and kill one of them, for they all revere it as a manifestation of Sanguinius's will. Astrath is the High Chaplain of the Blood Angels, and his special ability is the ability to sense when someone is close to falling to the Black Rage, making his brothers exceptionally uneasy around him. He carries with him an executioner's axe that he uses on his brothers almost as often as he uses it on the enemies of the Imperium. While he is well respected for his skill and position, no one in the chapter enjoys his presence because of what he brings. Lamartes is another chaplain, and another special case with the Black Rage. While he hasn't pulled himself out of it, he still mostly has control of himself and his memories, meaning he's been put in charge of the Death Company. He can even interact with most allies without actively hurting them, so long as they don't go out of their way to provoke them, as he is still in the throes of the Black Rage. And lastly, but certainly not least, we have the sanguinary High Priest Corbulo, head of the Apothecarium. He carries with him the Red Grail as he seeks for a cure to the curses. Recently, it looked like he was on track for a cure, before the Tyranids destroyed the research in the planet it was on during the devastation of Baal. I wanted to end off this video with something that helped encapsulate who the Blood Angels are. Most often they are called noble savages, so I'd like to focus on that. They strive to be noble, to be a shield for the Imperium citizens, and a sword to slay its enemies. They try their best to be good people and do what they believe is right, but in the end they are savages. Their inherent nature is to be violent and brutal, more so than most other Marines, and that is something they really wish they weren't. Thank you all so much for watching. Since I've finally covered the big factions of 40k, I figured it was time to move into a new direction. So I'm going to be talking about what I want from here on. At the current moment, a lot of the coming videos are going to be on the Blood Angels, so I do hope you come to like them as much as I do, or at least come to see them in a new light. Thank you everyone for watching. As always, if you have comments, questions, or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section below, and if you enjoy my content, consider liking or maybe even subscribing. I stream weekly on Twitch on Wednesdays from 4 to 10 Eastern Standard Time at twitch.tv/brothersendarax, link in the description below. I also have a Discord server now, link available in the description below as well. Thank you all so much for watching, and take care out there.